Hello baseball fans, this video is my all-decade team for the decade of the 2010s. It starts off with Clayton Kershaw pitching. Clayton Kershaw had an unbelievable decade, 10 great seasons, some unbelievably great seasons, winning the Cy Young 3 years during the time. No poor season at all. Every season was terrific. Catching is Buster Posey. Buster Posey also way ahead as far as all of the catchers of the decade. Is making the All-Star 6 times, MVP in 2012. At first base is Miguel Cabrera. He started off the decade with 7 All-Star seasons, making MVP twice. He got, by the point system I use, over 50 points in 2012, over 56 points in 2013. Many seasons, most seasons, nobody gets 50 points. He got 50 points 2 years in a row. If you want more details on how I come up with these points, check out Al's all-time stat details video that's part of my 2018 playlist. At second base is Robinson Cano. Robinson Cano started the year real strong with the Yankees, and then he continued with the Mariners and still did very good, not quite as good as he had done with the Yankees. The amount of points that he has for a second baseman is really great. He made the All-Stars 7 times during the decade. At third base is Adrian Beltre. He started off the decade strong with the Red Sox, then went to the Rangers, and did just about as well for the next 4 or 5 years, making the All-Stars 4 times. His point total it far surpasses any other third baseman for the decade, and so he's in that position on the team. At shortstop is Troy Tulowitzki. Troy Tulowitzki started the decade really strong, making the All-Stars 5 times. Those first several seasons, it wasn't that he was just like the best hitting shortstop. He was one of the best hitters in the whole league the first several years. So the points that he earned for that brought him through. By my point system, it's not really even close having him at shortstop for the decade. At first first outfield spot is Mike Trout. Mike Trout did not play the first year because he wasn't yet in the majors, but then he did so great, so consistently great from 2012 through 2019, making the All-Stars each of those years. It's not even close. His point total is way beyond that of the following outfielders. In the second spot is Nelson Cruz, who's significantly behind Trout, but still well ahead of the ones behind him. He played and was productive each season in the decade, and he put up good points during each season, and he put up great points during several of the seasons. He was very productive offensively, making the All-Stars 5 times. Then in the final spot was J.D. Martinez, and this spot was open. There were a lot of people that were contending for this in 2019, so it was real fun for me to add up the totals at the end and to keep track of it through September to see who was going to make it. And J.D. Martinez had an awesome year in 2018 that really put him on the radar here that he could be a contender to make the team. And then he did well in 2019 as well. So he got into that final starting outfield position for the decade team. This is a view of the next 6 best pitchers and 3 hitters who also make the team but did make the starting lineup of the team. It starts off with Justin Verlander, who had a great decade, followed by Max Scherzer and Zach Greinke. Then Chris Sale, Jacob deGrom, who just came on strong the last 2 years of the decade, and Madison Bumgarner as the pitchers, and then Joey Votto, Paul Goldschmidt, and David Ortiz in the hitting positions. And the hitters are all first basemen or DHs. David Ortiz, of note, didn't play the last few years, but he did so well the beginning of the decade that he still held on to his spot on the team. Here's a view of the starters on the left, the other part of the team on the right. What I do each year when I do this is I try and spread out the cards to have one card for each season. So there's 10 years in the decade. So the left page is 9 different years from 2010 through 2019, and the right page is 9 different years. They're all Topps cards. Like Kershaw's 2019 card, Posey is a 2014, Cabrera is 2016, Cano is 2013, Beltre is 2015, Tulowitzki is a 2012 card, Trout is a 2011 card, Nelson Cruz is a 2010 card, and J.D. Martinez is a 2018 card. And then on the other page, Verlander is a 2016, Scherzer's a 2017, Greinke is 15, Sale is 2014, DeGrom is 2019, Bumgarner is 2011, Votto is 2018, Goldschmidt is 2013, and Ortiz is 2010. When you do this too, you get to see kind of how the card designs change over the years. See, like Posey in 2014, that looks very similar in design to Cano from 2013. They just added the team emblem in 2014. And then Verlander 2016, that design is pretty close to the 2017, the Scherzer, except they took the emblem and the lines to the right of it, they kind of put up at an angle rather than having them straight. And then you see Martinez from 2018, looks very similar in design to the 2016 card that Verlander's in. The way you can tell the difference is under his name where the team is listed, that is shaded in 2018, and in 2017 or 2016 it wasn't shaded in. Here's a look at the statistics of the pitchers. So you see on the top is the ones who actually made the team, who eventually made the team, and at the bottom you see pitchers that were in contention, almost came at the end of the decade and made it. A lot of it has to do with, does the prime of your career line up with the 10 years of the decade? Kershaw, he was great every year. Verlander had a down season. I'm not sure if he was hurt. I presume he was hurt. He might have just not had that good an ERA that year. Scherzer as well had a down season, and also their best seasons weren't all as good as Clayton Kershaw's best season. Greinke had a few down seasons, so he's in 4th place. Sale and DeGrom just came in later because they're younger. They started later. DeGrom really was not even on the radar for somebody who would make the team until he had that awesome 2018 season when he won the Cy Young Award. The 60 points that he got for that year, higher than anyone else in this whole thing for the decade. And to do that, you just have to have an ERA that is way, way lower than the league ERA and pitch a lot of innings. And then Bumgarner was consistent throughout the decade. He didn't have a lot of seasons where he didn't have any seasons where he got in the 40s as far as points, but he was consistently good. And then you see at the bottom, David Price and Felix Hernandez, they were on the team. I track this each year and update it. They were on the team most of the decade. They just kind of fell off at the end of the decade. Corey Kluber came up. He's a little younger and he wasn't playing in the beginning of the decade, but he had some great seasons. Then he got hurt in 2019. If he didn't get hurt, then he possibly had a chance to make it. This is a view of the hitters that actually are on the team. So you can see the number of points that they all compiled. You see that the bottom sub positions, Votto, Goldschmidt, and Ortiz, they're all first basemen or DHs, but they're not close to Cabrera. Cabrera is 90 points higher than Joey Votto because Cabrera just had so many monster seasons in the beginning of the decade. And also the outfielders, Mike Trout had a very high amount of points, similar to Cabrera, but the top 2 outfield spots had a real high amount of points. J.D. Martinez wouldn't have made the sub spots. There were other first basemen that had more points than the rest of the outfielders. Here's a comparison of the infield positions. So we have in the blue on the top the people that are on the team. Then in the gray are the subs, and then you have a couple people at each position that were in the running or almost made it at the end but didn't quite make the team. So you see, for catcher, Buster Posey was almost twice the next contenders for the position, which would be Joe Mauer and Yadier Molina. And then for first base, Adrian Gonzalez had one of those sub spots for most of the decade, but then he didn't play at the end of the decade, or his career ended. At second base, Altuve really was coming along, but he's still not close to the total that Robinson Cano had, because Robinson Cano was just so awesome at the beginning of the decade, and it carried through the middle of the decade. And at third base, Longoria and Donaldson. Donaldson had a couple really good years, but not nearly as many as Adrian Beltre did. And Longoria kind of petered out at the end, compared to so he didn't get enough points to add up to anything near what Adrian Beltre had. And then at shortstop also, I've seen another all-decade team where Francisco Lindor is the shortstop, and he really came on at the second part of the decade. But if you evaluate each season and give it equal weight, Troy Tulowitzki just was so great at the beginning of the decade that it doesn't compare to what Lindor did at the end of the decade. Tulowitzki has a lot more points, so I feel he deserves the position. Here's a view of the outfielders, and you see that Mike Trout is just head and shoulders above everybody else, and then Nelson Cruz is kind of at another level, way above everybody else. And you can see that at the end of the decade, it was a competition between J.D. Martinez, Mookie Betts, and Charlie Blackmon, who were all players who didn't have points in the beginning of the decade, that were coming on at the end trying to earn a position, and they were going for the position that had been held by Carlos Gonzalez and Andrew McCutchen. McCutchen, MVP earlier in the decade, had a great career. He got hurt, had a great decade. He got hurt in 2019. If he didn't get hurt and he just got 10 points, he could have held on to his position as an outfielder for the decade, but he did, and he didn't get any points. So at the end, he got passed by J.D. Martinez. And Betts and Blackmon, if the decade just moved over and was a couple years forward, and you cut off the first years, then they would be on it too, or they'd have a good shot at being at it. Of course, though, they wouldn't have beat out Mike Trout. So here's the final view. You have the starters on the left, the rest of the players on the right, and then the points in the middle. I hope you enjoyed this. I plan on doing this for every decade. I have the cards and I have the numbers. I just got to put together the video, and it's fun to do this. And just each year, it's fun to see, in addition to who's going to make each all-time team, to see, for a decade, who's doing the best for the decade. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you do, please subscribe to my channel. I'll be putting up the other decades, hopefully, in the coming weeks. Thanks.